Kamala Harris campaign has become increasingly negative toward third-party candidates, even running an attack ad against Green Party candidate Jill Stein. It's the view of Democrats, the defenders of democracy, that any vote for Jill Stein is in fact the same thing as a vote for Trump. Stein is polling at 1% in some northern swing states, and that could end up being the margin of victory for the winning candidate in a state like Michigan, where uncommitted voters and many Arab Americans are not happy with either Harris or Trump, or Joe Biden and his policies for that matter. Here now to discuss is none other than Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. Welcome back to Rising.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much. Good to see you, Robby.
Great
Niall.
to see you, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to so many of these attacks now coming from Democrats really focused on you. What do you say to the Democrat who contends that if anyone votes for you, they are voting for Donald Trump?
Well, that's BS, can I say? And the American people think that that's BS. The American people are actually clamoring for other choices in this election. Going into this election, Gallup poll showed, some 60% approximately of Americans were really hungry for another major party, another choice, because the two major parties have done such a poor job of serving the American people. Americans are struggling in virtually every dimension of our lives, on healthcare, on the crisis of housing, with half of Americans struggling to make their monthly, their monthly rent or mortgage, and the incredible student debt and medical debt and a climate crisis that's going, bonkers right now. And we don't have money for FEMA to assist really, people who've been hit very hard in devastated communities. But that amount of money, some $9 billion approximately, was just given to Israel and Bibi Netanyahu for the purpose of expanding his war, his genocidal war, and so on. The American people want other choices, and so many Muslims in particular do not want to cast a vote that endorses genocide. So the American people are entitled to other choices, and they're also entitled to a debate. And I would say bring it on, because the more Democrats draw attention to the fact that there are other choices, and there is a public interest choice, which is not bought and paid for by the usual big donors in Wall Street and the war machine, the more that people see that they actually have other choices, the more excited and enthusiastic people are to support our campaign. If you just look at the comments, on that episode yesterday here on Breaking Points, or on the Breakfast Club, or the live Q&A session done with Newsweek, these are not green audiences, but overwhelmingly the comments are very much in support of our campaign. So many of them saying they weren't going to vote in this election, and now they are going out to register green and vote for Steinway.
I just wanted to hone in on one of the issues you mentioned there, Dr. Stein, because of course, very recently at the weekend, we had Lloyd Austin and Tony Blinken writing this letter that purported to suggest that the administration could consider cutting off arms to Israel if it didn't increase the supply of humanitarian aid to Gaza. But of course, the deadline for that was beyond the date of the presidential election. What did you make of that letter and that proposal?
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. President Biden said basically the same thing before the major offensive against Rafah at the southern border of Gaza. He said the same thing, that if there was a destructive, intense invasion and a lot of civilian deaths in Rafah, that there would be consequences in terms of the weapon supply, and there were absolutely none. The Biden-Harris administration has had no red line whatsoever, and most recently they rewarded Israel with billions more when it began extending this genocidal war into Lebanon, where people are being devastated and killed now by the thousands, with essentially the same kind of carpet bombing campaign that's begun, that's been taking place in Gaza. The destruction has also extended to the West Bank. There's now a major initiative that's pending towards Iran as well. So, we're seeing massive expansion of this war. It's basically Bibi Netanyahu's war. He's been given the the freedom basically to set U.S. foreign policy here in a very dangerous and risky setting. He's being allowed to do that without red lines, without any consequences. This is already violating U.S. laws, 3 of them, which say that the U.S. may not provide military support to any country that is interfering with the delivery of humanitarian aid, that is violating human rights, and that stands in violation of nuclear weapons treaties, which Israel is in violating the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So there are reasons right here and now why it is absolutely illegal, not to mention that it defies the vast majority of the American people who've gone on record saying, way back in November, the American people were already convinced they had seen quite enough of this horrific genocide. Recently it's been pointed out that Israeli soldiers, the IDF, purposely shoot children in the head. And we're seeing, young children brought into emergency rooms, basically, on the verge of death from this campaign to assassinate children. So, this is a horrible war. The American people vehemently oppose it, and it is a dereliction of duty for the White House to have passed the baton for commander-in-chief over to Bibi Netanyahu. They need to end this genocidal war right now.
Here's why I think it's so hard to take many Democrats seriously when they say that democracy itself is existential in this election, but then propose delegitimizing tactics against third-party candidates, even though they're perfectly willing. Tim Walz said recently, for instance, he wants to abolish the Electoral College, the reason being they think it's an unfair advantage to Republicans. So my point being, Democrats are happy to propose sweeping changes to the constitutional system. So they could propose, for instance, to neutralize the threat of third parties playing a spoiler effect, they could propose ranked choice voting. Whereas if the first candidate, does not get the plurality of votes, then the vote automatically goes to the second choice candidate. So you could have it where somebody's first vote is for Jill Stein, but if you don't get 51% of the vote, or however it works, then that vote goes to Kamala Harris. So you're not stealing that vote if that's, indeed how people are thinking. But I never hear them proposing that. So how can I take it seriously?
Exactly. In fact, they do just the opposite. And ranked choice voting, to explain it very simply, this is a little oversimplified. You get to rank your choices instead of just voting for one, kind of calculating your odds and making a roll of the dice. Your vote should not be a roll of the dice. Your vote should be a statement about, where you want to go. If your vote is not a statement about where you want to go and what your values are, that you oppose genocide, that you want to spend our tax dollars. Right now, half of our congressional budget is being spent on the endless war machine, one catastrophic war after another, especially in the Middle East. If you want those dollars to be spent here at home, addressing our urgent needs to support small businesses, for healthcare as a human right for everyone, for affordable housing, to deal with the climate crisis. If you want to spend our dollars on our urgent needs here at home, you can cast that vote as number 1 in ranked choice voting, and you can cast your safety vote if you think there is a lesser evil here, and good luck figuring out which one it is. You can make your number 2 choice your lesser evil choice. But the point is, there is a record. And also the way that this works is in ranked choice voting, if your first choice doesn't win on the first count, the majority of the vote, then your vote is automatically reassigned to your second choice. So you're never throwing your vote away. You never have to worry about a divided vote or unintended consequences of the vote. And you have to record your vote if you ever want to move us forward. Otherwise, there is no evidence that there is opposition to genocide, or that there is a deeply felt need for healthcare as a human right. We need to be able to say what it is we want in this election. And the Democrats not only do not support ranked choice voting, they actively fight it. They're contesting it because they rely on fear campaigning. They want to extort your vote. Why do they rely on fear? Because they want to serve their big donors. And if they're serving their big donors, they can't talk about healthcare as a human right, or they can't talk about supporting small businesses and breaking up, the big corporate conglomerates through antitrust laws, or affordable housing and a an initiative, a major initiative to build public housing, so-called social housing, and actually meet our urgent needs. They don't want to talk about that because they want to basically keep pleasing their big donors. They are bought and paid for. They have delivered a political system that is bought and paid for, and the American people deserve other choices. And before I forget, I just want to mention JillStein2024.com. You can find out more there and hear about what it is that the Democrats are absolutely terrified that you should find out about in this election.
But Dr. Stein, if we just have time for one more question quickly. I take many of the points that you make about bad faith arguments and so forth being made. But, when you talk about, for example, healthcare or housing, many people who aren't operating in bad faith think that Donald Trump would be worse for those issues than Kamala Harris. I understand that you feel there is an imperative to give people an alternative view, that you're very opposed to the genocide and all of that, as many reasonable people are. But does it give you any pause, the possibility that your candidacy might in effect make a second Trump term more likely?
Both candidates give me pause. And let me just tell you what one of the most realistic risks right now, one of the biggest devastating and catastrophic risks, is that Israel goes ahead and does what it says, that it's going to attack Iran. It will probably attack the nuclear facilities in Iran. Could Russia be brought in? Yes, they certainly could, and they have expressed, their support. They're in a military alliance with Iran. I'm actually, frankly, very concerned about the potential for another. We're already in an expanding and catastrophic Middle East war, and it's on the verge of expanding right now, thanks to the efforts of Bibi Netanyahu to generalize this war, and thanks to the support of the Biden-Harris administration, which they have expressed across the board. Would Trump do the same thing? Yeah, probably he would. So, in my view, we need to stand up and vote right now to avert a catastrophe. And remember, the draft is back. The draft is back. If you're between 18 and 25, you are registered. You don't know a thing about it, but you have been automatically registered and they know how to find you. And all it takes is for the White House to declare that we're now in another wartime situation. Biden has already expressed the commitment to send boots on the ground, and they have begun doing so. There are many soldiers, some 40,000 that are in the Middle East, and there are 5,000 servicemen and women with each of the aircraft carrier battle groups, and there are 2 of them right now in that region, and there are more that are going right now in order to so-called defend Israel. So, the whole draft could be reactivated. I'm as frightened about that right now. This isn't some future thing. This is right now. We have fascism here right now when you have Democrats supporting the IDF, training our local police forces through cop cities, the suppression of free speech, right to protest. We don't for Donald Trump for the catastrophe to be here right now. It's important that we stand up for the values and for the democratic rights that we deserve. We can create an America that works for all of us, but we got to stand up and demand it right now.
We at Rising so much believe in platforming other voices, doing what the mainstream media has failed to do in terms of letting you hear from the other candidates. That's why the day after the Biden-Trump debate, we had on RFK Jr. and Chase Oliver, the Libertarian Party candidate, and, of course, Dr. Stein. And we were happy to welcome you back today. Thanks so much for being with us.
Great to be with you. Enjoy it, as always.